Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for our safety standards at Northbridge. On behalf of the Northbridge companies, I want to welcome you to tonight's event. Tonight, our discussion is all about safety first in our new normal. Northbridge has 18 communities throughout New England. We are located in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. We are a small, privately held company, and I have personally had the privilege of knowing our owners, Wendy and Jim, for the last 20 plus years. Their integrity has shined throughout this pandemic, and their commitment to care and safety first was why we were one of the first senior living providers to act with an abundance of caution way back in early March. And it does feel way, way back, doesn't it? The difficult decisions that our owners, Wendy and Jim, and the leadership team at Northbridge had to make throughout this pandemic were made with one thing in mind, and that is the safety and the well-being of our residents and our associates. We have always been a company that focuses on the people, and the people are our residents, their families, and our associates. We are in the people business. And our philosophy of living well and loving life is meant for all of our people. And even during this pandemic, our residents and our associates have found joy and contentment, and they truly do know how much we care as a company. Tonight, I will be joined by three of our amazing members of our leadership team. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce them. We will be, throughout this webinar, I will be asking questions and asking our guests to speak candidly and honestly and with the transparency we are all about as Northbridge. So first, I'd like to introduce Patricia Foran. Patricia is our Vice President of Wellness and Quality. And I'm sure, and she's waving there on the screen. Pat has a proven track record of success and is charged with ensuring that our company, our policies and procedures support operational goals, our objections, regulatory mandates, while mitigating risk and finding effective and creative ways to introduce changes and train our teams. Prior to joining Northbridge, Pat held executive management roles at Eclipse Senior Living and Senior Lifestyle Corporation, as well as the president of Core Consulting Services. In her role as Senior Vice President of Health and Wellness with Eclipse, Pat oversaw wellness and quality initiatives for a national platform of over 100 senior living communities in 26 states. My gosh. Pat's background in health service management includes operations management, risk management, government and regulatory interpretation and compliance, health program design and implementation, as well as quality assurance program design and implementation. Pat is a registered nurse and holds a master's in business administration from Western New England College. In addition to her impressive experience that I just mentioned, Pat is also a veteran. And I can speak as also a member of the leadership team that I have been so blessed and so grateful that Pat is a part of our team throughout this pandemic. So welcome, Pat, and thanks for joining.
My pleasure.
Next, we have Kristen Tucker. Kristen, if you don't mind waving. And Kristen has been the executive director at Stafford Hill, our community in Plymouth, Massachusetts, which happens to be our flagship community. And she's been at Stafford Hill for over 4 years. Kristen transitioned to assisted living after a very long career in healthcare, working in hospitals and skilled rehabilitation centers as a licensed speech language pathologist, clinical specialist, and regional director. Kristen's clinical area of expertise was cognitive and communication impairments due to dementia, and she has presented nationally on both of these topics. This background has been very helpful in a transition to assisted living for Kristen, assisting families that are working with loved ones with mild cognitive impairment and dementia with their family members. Kristen's clinical background has also aided in the understanding and implementing the extensive protocols that we have had to put in place at our communities during COVID-19 to protect the health and safety of our residents and our associates. When Kristen isn't at work, which these days isn't often, she is found exploring her new neighborhood in Sagamore Beach, Massachusetts, where she recently moved with her husband, Dennis, and her 3 children and her 2 dogs. So welcome, Kristen, and thank you for joining as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And finally, we have John Radcliffe, also one of our executive directors. John has been in senior living for well over a decade, with the majority of his time in his career with us at Northbridge. And John has found his home at Carriage House, which is our community in Wayland, Massachusetts. And John has expressed that he's literally picked out his apartment for a move-in of 2045. So we'll be waiting. With residents with dementia, and unfortunately knows more about COVID than anyone should after these 11 or so months. John has 3 wonderful kids, and what he misses most in the world is coaching their youth sports. But since his coaching days are over, he and his wife have found a new love in dog-friendly breweries and with their golden retriever. So thank you, John, also for joining.
My
So
pleasure.
welcome all of you, and thank you. I want to get right to our questions because we are very respectful that you all that are listening today or watching on this Zoom have taken valuable time out of your days to be with us, to learn a little bit more about our safety protocol and so forth at the Northbridge companies. I want to be sure that you are aware that you can utilize your chat button, which is at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer as many questions that we can during this webinar, but also if we cannot get to your questions, please email address so that we can email you and respond personally to anything that we weren't able to touch on.
Well,
Pandemic, to say the least. What are some of the examples of these decisions and how have you balanced them?
Mel, I think you froze up just a little, but I'll assume I can answer this question. This pandemic, was new to everyone. We were all back in February. We never heard of coronavirus. It was overtaking everyone. The medical profession didn't quite know how to respond. We were all learning together. And I think that has been one of the biggest challenges at the very beginning of the pandemic, was to really have to use the information that we had at hand and seek information. Spent a lot of time networking with our not only our Board of Health, our Department of Health, our regulatory bodies, and professionals in the field. And we all work very closely and collaboratively together to figure out what do we need to do. And as Mel said at the beginning, we were very proactive at getting PPE out, masks out to all of our residents and our staff, and sadly asking people to stay in their apartments. So some of the decisions, really difficult ones, were that we are a really hospitality oriented company. We pride ourselves in our interactions with all of our residents, and quite honestly, the interactions they have amongst themselves. That's what we're passionate about here at Northbridge. And so to have to make decisions that would ask people to, for their own safety, to stay in their apartments and have us help them figure out how to communicate more remotely was probably one of the biggest challenges. And I think we did what we had to do with the information we had at hand. And I think it's a balance. The balance we had to find was really with the medical science information that we had, and our passion for our residents and our passion for our staff, because we have to balance every day. The decisions we make have to be responsible for not only our residents, but our staff as well.
Great, Pat. And I know, thank you. And I know that Wendy and Jim, the owners of Northbridge, made the decision early on to also put together a COVID response team of the leadership of Northbridge. And that response team met 7 days a week for a good part of the pandemic, and only recently went to 5 days a week. I think when it was 7 days, it was twice a day, actually, and then went to 5 days. And can you just speak a little bit on that in regards to, not the conversations specifically, but feeding, basically you were on so many calls with the health organizations, and you were getting such great information, doing so much research night and day, and getting that to us. Can you talk a little bit about that and what a difference that made?
Well, I think when one of the reasons I came to Northbridge was because of the privately held company with owners who really understand the business and are very active in the business. One of our owners, her father lives in one of our communities, and that's a lot of responsibility when you think about it from my perspective. So I was so appreciative of how we as an executive team, everybody that you see on this screen, from senior leadership to executive directors, we really do our best to make decisions as a group. And and my job is to provide the information, to provide the best advice I possibly can. But at the same time, there are many different specialty perspectives to take in mind. And everybody on the senior leadership team we just so respect and value each other's judgment and opinion, and we make decisions as a team moving forward. And I think that's what's really special about this company.
That's great. Thank you, Pat. And shifting gears a little bit, I wanted to talk to both John and Kristen, who, of course, are right at the communities, and spending time with the residents, talking to the family members and associates on a daily basis. So, John and Kristen, I'll start with you, ladies first. Can you walk our guests through a day in the life of our residents and how we are ensuring that the residents have access to safe and engaging programs in our community during this time? Because we talk during this call, of course, about safety, but obviously, engagement and being able to laugh and smile throughout the day is so important as well, and avoiding isolation. So, Kristen, do you mind sharing that with us?
So, when Pat was talking about the hard decisions that we had to make back in the spring to really make sure we were protecting the health and safety of our residents. And at that time, we were, the residents were spending a lot of their time in their apartment so that we could keep them safe. And we had to get really creative at that time on how we were going to keep them engaged and have fun. And that's really what we do in assisted living. I've worked in a lot of places. I've never worked in a place where we have as much fun as we have here. So it was like mission 1, mission 2 after safety, to make sure we could keep the residents engaged and happy, even during the really tough time that it was in the early spring. So we had converted to room service for dining. So we had carts, and the dining staff would go around and take orders each day. Our programming staff developed programs that they could walk up and down the hallways with, conduct, visits from doorways. We all became experts in Zoom and FaceTime and Google Duo, and our residents did too. They, some of them were a little leery of technology at first, but it's such an effective way to maintain communication when you can't see somebody face to face. So that was a really good thing. We had nurses in the apartments every single day, the care staff in the apartments every single day. Department heads were visiting the residents. So, family members would often remark to us that their loved ones getting, 13 or 14 visits per day, someone popping their head in the apartment, versus being at home and isolated and alone. So even during that toughest time, I do feel like we were able to keep the residents engaged and having fun. And then as things progressed and we were able to reintroduce small group programming, reopen the dining room, things like that, we did it gradually. We did it with very thoughtful planning and guidance and information from Pat and the leadership team. And so we were able to walk through every scenario and plan where the furniture is going to go, where's the hand sanitizer going to go, what's the traffic flow going to look like, how many people can we put in this room safely. We taught the residents to wear masks before they came out of their apartments. So they're all experts at it now. They remind each other. They've really learned how to have fun, even under these different circumstances. And, we had Christmas Carol karaoke today. It was phenomenal.
That's fabulous. And I love you just, Kristen, your smile says it all. And I thank you for that, because, professionally and personally, I've been through helping somebody a senior, and knowing that you would be the executive director would give me such comfort. So thank you for that. John, I know I've heard from you talk through your passion shines. Could you also address that question as terms of a day in the life for our residents, and being able to continue to have social programs and keeping our residents engaged?
Kristen talked about that period of time when our residents were in their apartment, and it seems so long ago, because we've gotten back to the point where it's, despite everyone's wearing masks, that it's almost back to normal, if you will. But I always like to find the silver lining in things, and I remember having a conversation with my family a few months ago, and my kids are all grown, they're in their 20s, but we had more family dinners over the summer during COVID, when everyone was trapped in the house. We had more family dinners over a 4-month period than we did the prior 4 years combined. So that's, I try to find some good things. And, some of the things we set up when residents were in their apartment is we call a buddy system. And each department head was assigned 5 or 6 residents. And every day you had to go and visit those residents. And at first it became like, oh, it was like a task. Oh, shoot, I forgot to go visit Lois. But after a while, you get into routine, and it was by far the best part of our day. It was the best part of the residents' day. I have residents to this day mention that they missed the buddy visits. Yeah. And it was a great time just to connect one-on-one. And and after the visit, you maybe set them up with a FaceTime with their family. And to Kristen's point, we're all experts on FaceTime now. And actually, I think FaceTime, I think, again, another silver lining is the advent of Zoom and technology. And so for our residents who in our Vita neighborhood who have dementia, so much of how they communicate and understand is through facial expressions, which, if you're sitting with a family member who has a mask on, it's not going to be, as a quality of visit as a Zoom, face to face, 6 inches away on a computer where they can see the smile and they can see the eyes light up. So, I like to find the silver linings. Don't get me wrong. I'm so glad that our residents are out of the apartment and in the dining room and, eating off of china. We all did our share of takeout and eating out of cardboard. And I'll never forget that. So the first day we opened the dining room, one of our residents came down in our Arvita neighborhood, and he took his silverware, his real pieces of real silverware, and clanged it on the plate. He goes, "Listen to that." So, real china and real silverware. So it's the little things that everyone appreciates now. So.
Right. Well, thank you, John. And we do need to think about the silver linings of all of it. And there are silver linings. And the fact that our residents have been able to continue to smile and be engaged and find joy in their days through all of the things that you as the executive directors and your teams have been doing is truly amazing. John and Kristen, I want to stay with you for a minute. And of course, we have our traditional assisted living in our communities, but we also have our we have supportive memory services in our Northbridge, in our Avita programs. How are we ensuring safety in memory care, which of course, as we all know, could be challenging for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia. So could, Kristen, I'll start with you again. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So we started with the physical layout of the neighborhood and making sure that we had things set up so it would encourage folks to stay socially distant. So we removed furniture like sofas that would encourage two ladies to sit next to each other and chat, and instead, had two comfortable chairs that were 6 feet apart. And you have to be diligent with that because people like to move things around. But that's where we started. We set up the dining so it's sort of, one person and at a table. And we added more tables and chairs and took out big tables and added smaller ones so that when people were eating, they were naturally spaced out. But they still were able to enjoy that, experience of being with others when eating. We added to our programming plan so that we had a couple of smaller group things going on at a time. So in a room where we used to have 10 people exercising and now we can only, have 4 or 5, then we would have something going on in another space. So again, just sort of naturally spacing people out. We were diligent with reminding and helping folks to wear masks that can, and many do. Many of our Avita residents, because now it's been so long, it has become part of their routine, and they have them on their, walker basket, and they're able to put them on themselves, and we're able to assist some folks with wearing them. So that's been a very good thing too. Not everybody can, we do the best we can with that.
And Kristen, I love what you said about, you might have 4 people doing an exercise and then maybe there's 4 others in a different part of the neighborhood doing something else. And that is so important for somebody with Alzheimer's and dementia. My mother-in-law had Alzheimer's and, her attention span changed. And so, when she lived in a memory care neighborhood, she would find herself, singing with a small group and then getting bored with that and walking down the hall and maybe doing, picking up a painting class or something. And that made all the difference in the world for her. So I love that that's something you've thought of as the executive director and your team to make sure there's still that choice and diversity in your Avita neighborhood. That's great to hear. And John, may I ask you the same question? Just about life in your Avita neighborhood and the challenges and joys that you found throughout the pandemic.
I can definitely speak to the joys, and it's been a long 11 months now, 10 months. It's been a long stretch, and and as you mentioned when you introduced me, I have a passion for our residents with dementia, and I would go and we'd be on calls and God bless Pat. I don't know, sometimes I call her. We'd be on calls, and then you go walk by the TV in the living room, and they're talking about COVID. And it was COVID, COVID, COVID. It's all you talked about. Then you go into Avita, and it's like COVID didn't exist. We don't watch TV in our Avita. So our residents, you mentioned, you say COVID, and they go, "What's that? Is a new candy or something like that?" So it's that's where I'd go to escape. And it wasn't like it used to be, the vibrant, fun, exciting, and music and laughing during the summer, but it is now. You go in now, and we're spread out, and every morning at 10 o'clock, and I'll go and join sometimes, and they'll do the exercise, and it's a different, today was the Beatles. They did the Beatles, stretching to the Beatles, and it smiles, it's fun. And to Kristen's point, some of our residents are able to keep the mask on all day, some aren't. But our staff, they're 100% compliant with PPE, and that's the start. That's how we get it. That's how we're going to stay ahead of this.
Absolutely, John. Well, thank you. And Pat, back to you. I'd be remiss if we didn't address all of the recent news regarding the impending vaccine. I call the light at the end of the tunnel, or the end of the whatever. For those considering a move to a senior living community, but are wondering if they should wait for a vaccine, what advice would you offer as an RN and with all of your experience?
Well, I am so excited that there is a vaccine and it's within a couple weeks of our reach. I know in the long run, in the short run, we need to just focus on getting all of our seniors vaccinated. And as a company, about 2 months ago, we proactively reserved enough vaccine for every single resident in our buildings and every single associate. And now our job is to, when the clinics become available, to get everyone into those clinics and get them vaccinated. We're, the federal government actually did assisted living a favor and put us on the priority list, realizing that we are a group setting. As much as we see ourselves as having apartments and people living in their homes, we are a group setting. And so with that comes the risks, extra risks related to COVID. So having the vaccine available now, and there's just a small window of opportunity though, for all seniors living in our setting, is that we, when the clinics are held, we're going to have the vaccine available. We're going to have it for 3 different clinics. And then whoever chooses not to get the vaccine or isn't in this type of setting will then have to wait for it to become publicly available. So now is the time, really. It's to be in assisted living and take advantage in the next couple weeks of the clinics that will be provided. And I am just super excited to see the light at the end of the tunnel for us all. And our seniors so deserve to have the lifestyle that we are known to provide, and that of course they are looking forward to too. I think we're doing a fabulous job right now with our everyday lifestyle as best we can, given some of the, still the social distancing and the masking, but the vaccine really will be the game changer. So I'm excited for people who live in senior housing, and for the residents who don't, I don't know. I'm not sure there's that great of a plan available, and it could take, months and months and months. So.
Wow. And I thank you, Pat. It is, I think all of us on this Brady Bunch Zoom right now are so thrilled about the vaccine and have this just contentment right now among us. I want to just mention for anybody on listening or watching us right now, I did see that news clip of the 90-something-year-old Northern Ireland senior who was the very first person in the world to get the vaccine. And first of all, the woman did not look a day over 70, never mind 90. So I'd really like to get to know her, and find out what her trick is. But the joy on that woman's face, I mean, and hearing her talk, I mean, she did that for herself, she did it for her family, and she did it for the rest of the world. So that to me was just amazing to see. And she knew it was safe. She knew it was the right thing to do. And she knew it was going to not only protect herself, but those people she loves and those people she doesn't even know.
Yeah.
So it was a great, great thing to see. And I love, because I've been in senior living for over 30 years, I loved that the very first person was this dynamic 90-year-old woman. So
yeah. Thank
Thank you, Pat. And John and Kristen, based on your experience with your residents and what you've gone through watching, as leaders of your community, making decisions that you've had to make, but also, watching your residents throughout the 11 months or however long, can you give examples to us of why a community setting like Stafford Hill and Carriage House is the safest option, in your opinion, for seniors today? John, you're next.
I was going to say,
Okay, I'll go
John,
first.
take a turn going first.
It's the reason why I got into this business, this industry, many years ago, was my passion for this generation. They are the greatest generation. We have our baby boomers coming up, but they are tough people. And to see, they've gone through a lot worse than COVID. They've gone through world wars, and Len upstairs every day tells stories. He was one of my buddies there when I'd visit, and he would just tell a different story, sometimes the same story, about World War II. And this is just another blip in their radar, if you will. They're tough people, and to watch them come through this, and to see them, they're making candy cane reindeers today, and to see the joy in their face that they did that, making them for their grandchildren. They're tough people, but I think what makes this setting so safe is, and I attribute a lot to Pat, is we know so much more now than we did 10 months ago in terms of PPE. And Northbridge, you mentioned earlier, they were ahead of the game. We never had to worry about running out of PPE. Every day on the news, you'd see the nurses were using the same masks, but we knew we had 100,000 masks at the headquarters ready if we needed it. And that was huge for our staff, knowing that, they were going to be well protected throughout this whole thing. And we continue to be. But it's the knowledge that the education about what is close contact now, and we're just more aware of it. And I have people moving into our community next week just because they want to get on the list for the vaccine. As Pat said, I had a family member say that's a game changer. If their parents can get moved to the top of the list by being a resident in our community, he's going to do it. So.
Thank you, John. Anything to add to that, Kristen?
Sure. I think, one of the most important things that we do is we have a very specific screening process for anybody that comes into the community. And we have, we regulate who's coming into the community, and anybody that is coming in has to pass our screening questions. We have a kiosk at the front desk, and you're required to sign in. You're required to take your temperature, enter that information, answer questions about symptoms and travel and things of that nature. Those questions have changed periodically through this whole pandemic based on what is going on out there in the world and what we have to worry about. When, we had some states that were safe for folks to travel from, and then they weren't, and then they changed. So we all take that very seriously. And we have had people that aren't able to come into the community, that aren't able to, move through the screening process, it also gives us a chance to ask people questions and make sure that they're feeling okay, that they haven't had, sometimes it prompts like, oh my goodness, I was with somebody the other day and then I heard, that maybe they tested positive. So it gives us those opportunities to ask questions and really make sure we're limiting the risk of exposure from anybody coming into the community. John mentioned PPE. I 100% agree. We have been well stocked from the very beginning. Every community was responsible for designating a person to keep inventory and keep the home office informed so that we always had a multi-day supply on hand for everything that we needed. We've had every variety of PPE that we need. We had different types of masks depending on what was going on, eye protection, gowns, gloves, all of it. And never were our associates in a situation where they had to reuse things. And as John said, we definitely have heard that from other places. And we also do temperature and wellness checks on our residents every single day. So every single day, the residents are visited by a nurse. And I think that that's huge. And I don't know how that can be something that's replicated outside of assisted living. So not only are they taking their temperature, but they're just doing a general wellness check, because what we learned, through the spring and early summer was how the virus can present in the elderly can be different. And it could be something like a behavior change or, a stomach symptom, something like that. So the nurses are assessing the residents for any change, anything going on, so that we can make sure we act on those things quickly if we need to.
Great. And I think, you've all touched beautifully on our protocol, the PPE, the infection control, all of the safety precautions we've had in place. I've had the pleasure of visiting, some of our communities during this pandemic. And when and I was just at John's community yesterday, and I was able to see residents laughing, finding, being together, albeit socially distanced with their mask on, but there was laughter and there was lots of things going on. And I think about people just on my street alone. I have a neighbor who's 90 years old and he is by himself. My husband and I worry about him. I've got other neighbors that, are so isolated. I wonder, are they, are they just watching the news all day? And God knows that can be extremely depressing. We all have to walk away from that a little bit. So I think not only are the safety precautions, the PPE, the protocols so important and make such a difference in comparison to a senior being at home, but that isolation part also is so incredibly important. So thank you all for sharing. I do know that we are getting more and more questions on this chat about the vaccine and what that means about for new residents moving in and what that means for our current residents. I will tell you that we will be reporting on that and working through that in the next coming weeks. But obviously all of our residents, whether they're new residents moving in within this month or not, will be able to be with our residents getting that vaccine. And we will have more and more information about how things might change with the vaccine, but we're just not ready at this time because we need to make sure that we have all the facts. I know that some other providers come out with information, but we want to make sure we have all the facts with, and that we've really dissected them to be sure that we continue with the abundance of caution that we have been in order to keep our residents safe, our associates safe, and do the right thing for everybody. So I'm going to continue with a few more questions because we do have a little bit more time. And John and Kristen, obviously for many of us, dining and meals and eating is a big part of our day. And I know that's a big part of the day of our residents. And it's always one of the big decision, part of the decision-making folks, decision-making questions that people have when choosing a senior living community. What's the food like? What's the quality? You know, what's the dining experience like? So can you speak to that a little bit? Obviously that changed dramatically. So can you speak to the changes and speak to what might not have changed during this?
Sure, I'll start again. So our dining room is open again. Here at Stafford Hill, it's open for 2 meals a day. It's open for lunch and dinner. And we did that so that we had that room available for programs in the morning because it's a big space and we can accommodate more folks there. So breakfast is still room service at this time here. But before, when the dining room wasn't open, we converted to delivering meals to rooms, to apartments. We had to explore different options to make sure we could deliver things hot, carts, things like that. But once we sort of, got it down pat, it worked really well. So basically, instead of your server coming to the table to take your order and show you the menu and ask you what you wanted to eat this evening, your server was knocking on your door and coming in and taking your order that way, and then bringing it to you a short time later. If you want something different, you want to try something else, you're able to ask for that just like you were in the dining room. We didn't have to change our menus. We didn't change anything. Some of the things that we serve certainly got more expensive in the spring and summer, but we just worked through that. We just felt like it was really important that we continue to provide the residents with delicious foods. We do a fair amount of eating around here. And so, we do snacks and fun things like that. So again, instead of having, a happy hour in the pub with cheese and crackers or things like that, then the programming staff was going door to door, offering, a beverage and an individual plate of snacks, that way.
That's great. That's great. And I know because how I relax at night is watching all of the Facebook pages of our communities and watching some of the ways that the teams would go and bring meals to the residents throughout the pandemic has been amazing. This team that just came up on the screen with the lobsters, they did a formal dinner party cart going around, and they dressed in tuxedos and formal wear, and they made it really special. I know we did that throughout, and I know even during the Thanksgiving Day holiday, when our residents were able to eat in the dining room, we had so many different special events going on to make that time even extra special, whether it's been kind of weaving Thanksgiving and Christmas together and started kicking off the Christmas season or the holiday season, or dressing up as pilgrims, or doing different games throughout the dinner meal. It was just amazing to see. So I know that our teams went above and beyond and continue to do so to make that dining experience so fun and so special. John, do you have anything to add about the dining experience specifically?
Yeah, well, I always say about assisted living is, everything we do here is important, but food is the only thing that every single resident does every day. Not every resident gets care or wants to go on a van ride or is an artist or loves music or plays bingo, but they all eat, many times a day, to Kristen's point. So, and it's a big social part of it too. So, we got creative when we were doing takeout and room service, and we have 2 residents, Len and Bob, who had every meal together. They sat at the same table. That was their table, even though we don't have assigned seats here. That was their table, and all of a sudden that's taken away. That social part of it. So we set up iPads for them. So we would deliver the meal and do a FaceTime, and they're at the other ends of the hallway, but they're able to still connect and eat together. But there's nothing like to my point earlier, eating off of real china with real silverware, the hot food, and We're doing 3 meals a day here at Carriage House in the dining room. And it's funny, Kristen said that. My original plan, once we started to talk about opening up, was to do the same thing, offer lunch and dinner in the dining room and have room service breakfast. But in talking with the residents, they would rather have breakfast in the dining room than lunch and dinner. They want that hot coffee, and so, and the hot eggs. So I get it. So it's nice. And we, right now, if you go in our dining room, it's probably dinner's over now, but Len and Bob are at each table, but they're facing each other. And, we've made it work. So the ladies who always had lunch together, they're close to each other. Their tables are socially distanced, but they're close and they can talk and socialize. So it's nice. It was, I'd never forget that feeling when I walked in that morning and the residents, we had just opened the dining room up and they were sitting having breakfast and you could smell the coffee and everything. And I said, this does my heart good. It was a great feeling and a great sight to see the residents and the smiles on their face. And they're great with their masks. They will sit at the table with their mask on until the food comes, and they're just terrific. Everyone's been terrific.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you both. Pat, keeping on that dining subject, what are some of the decisions made early on regarding safe dining, and where are we today with that safety of the dining?
Well, as both Kristen and John mentioned, early on, we had to, out of an abundance of caution, close our dining rooms. I mean, our dining rooms are like the social hub of our lives at our communities, and so of course you have like any dining room, you have a 4-top table with 4 people sitting there talking together. Well, so the one thing that we know much about coronavirus, and the 6-foot distancing is really a critical factor in helping prevent the spread. And so when we had to go, when we decided to start thinking about opening our dining rooms, it is really a big challenge to say, well, how do we do this? We know we want to do this because that's what we're all about, is that social hospitality and the gatherings, but how do you do that safely? And so and at what pace? And I have to say, being at this small regional company really gives us opportunities to make. We set the foundation, we set the infection control standards, we set the safety standards at the executive COVID committee level. But then we send out guidelines that each community, they're so unique that each community then decides, okay, how do we put this into operation? Here are the minimal standards, but what will that look like in my community? And so, like Kristen said, her residents really wanted the 2 meals a day in the dining room. That was important to them. Whereas John's, and breakfast is their most social event. I think that's, speaks to us realizing as soon as we possibly could start making changes that were safe to make, that we did, and we implemented and let the communities really have at it and say, okay, this is what my residents really enjoy. This is what's important to them. And we really, as we started to open back up back in June and July, that really was our focus. What is important in each community? Because just like in every neighborhood here, that we live in, it's unique, and there's a unique group of people that tend to live around you. So instead of being a top-down organization where we told them it's a cookie cutter, you have to do it this way, we really embraced letting our communities and having and respecting our community leadership to make those decisions on how will this look in my building. We appreciate having the standards of safety, and everybody, has been so embracing to that. But what does that mean here in my community? I mean,
Absolutely.
one of the sweet little stories I love to tell, because we all should love to eat. I mean, if we're in a group setting, it makes it much more fun. And we had this one of our Avita programs. They had a little women's group that always loved to have tea together, and they prided themselves in having real tea china cups and just having that lovely experience of a tea setting. And because of coronavirus, we really had to, for a period of time, a short period of time, move over to disposables, to individual servings. Well, as soon as we could find our way and feeling secure about saying, okay, we're going to open small group interactions. We're going to open the dining room. We're going to, one of the very first things this community wanted to do was to get the china out and have the ladies do their tea. And that warmed my heart. And that's really how I try to lead the company, is what is important. What does make our hearts sing. And that I will just always remember that, it's kind of in a way silly, but it was so meaningful to this little group of ladies. And I wish I was there that day when we had, the first tea group.
That's, oh my gosh, great story, Pat. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, John and Kristen, if I was a new family member, and my mom had just moved into one of your communities, what can I expect the safety measures to be when I'm visiting my mom? Kristen?
Sure. So we have our visits are scheduled. And so we do that, and so that we can, again, just sort of manage the number of people coming and going at any one time in the community, and make sure that we can, provide a nice setting for the visit. We have 3 really beautiful spaces in our community that we are able to host the visits. We have a living room with a fireplace, we have a private dining room, and we have a sunroom. And so if for new families, once, we do have a period of time when someone first moves in for the first 14 days that, we want to be really careful. And so we make sure that that person is risk-free, but that person still is able to have visits with their families. And so you would call our front desk. They maintain the schedule. You would pick a good time. We have times on the weekends and the evenings, and you would schedule your visit. When the visitor arrives, they go through our screening process. They hand sanitize. They need to have a mask on. They have their temperature taken. They sign into the community. You'll be escorted to the visiting room, and your loved one, will walk down and join you. We have the visits scheduled and spaced out so that we can safely escort everyone back to where they're going or out the door, and that we clean properly in between before the next visit comes in.
That's great, Kristen. And I know that there are some other senior living providers that have allowed in apartment visits. And I wanted to speak to this because, we're all human, and people are saying, why wouldn't you do that? And I think it's really important to say why Northbridge made the decision and still continues with that decision to have visits with family members in these areas throughout the community that are comfortable, private, and give the ability for people to meet and enjoy one's company. The main reason is because, we're all human. And, I know that I've run into a grocery store forgot my mask and went running back to my car to get my mask. But, when you're in that apartment, there's a risk of people not being masked. And that risk is very, very I mean, it's real. And, you know, we know through all of the latest surges throughout the country that much of it has come from small family group gatherings. And, you know, I want to go back to what we talked about at the very beginning. And when I was describing that, you know, we were one of the first senior living providers to act with such an abundance of caution so early on. And I kind of relate this to when my two adult kids would say when they were younger, like, well, Mom, Johnny down the street gets to do this. And you know what? I have to say respectfully, we can't worry about what other companies are doing because we've got to keep true to ourselves, which is safety and well-being of our residents, our people, like I described at the beginning first. And we're not sorry for that. We're sorry for, I'm sorry that my dogs are barking and I can't help it right now, but, and I'm sorry, and we're sorry for the pandemic, but we are not sorry for the choices we've made for the safety and well-being of our residents. And when we are through this and we can give hugs again, I will tell you that I'm going to hug the 3 people on this Zoom, as well as the owners of this company, because the decisions that have been made only for the safety and well-being of the company, of the residents and the people, and the associates and the family members. So that's something we're not sorry for. And so we are out of time, and I'm sorry for that. And my dogs have just said we're out of time. And I do apologize. That is the reality of Zoom in today's world. But I want to thank everybody for being a part of this. I want to thank Pat, and it's such a privilege to work with you. And I am so honored to be your partner throughout this, and one of your partners. And to Kristen and John, my God, you know, your heart, your passion, your love for the residents shines through, and we thank you for everything. So again, my apologies for my dogs, Tucker and Willie, but thank you very much all, and have a wonderful night, a safe night. Stay well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
good
you.
night.